It's Panini Senior Bowl week, and that means it's time to start prepping for some draft prospects to watch as practices and the game unfold in Mobile, Alabama.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. You're on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, diving into the Senior Bowl, prospects to watch, names I like, names I'm going to have. I got the binoculars over there on top of my suitcase. I'm getting ready to get in the rental car, and drive from Pensacola to Mobile. It's about an hour drive, and get locked in. Start getting ready to watch these prospects as the week of practice unfolds. Very excited to be in the weeds and bring you guys all of my takes throughout the course of the week. So we're going to go position by position room. Skill players, trenches, defensive back seven, and just acknowledge the names that exist out there that I think are names to know in each position room. So let's start with the quarterbacks. Here are the quarterbacks that are in attendance at the Senior Bowl. There's 6 of them. Taylen Green, Arkansas; Sawyer Robertson, Baylor; Luke Altmaier, Illinois; Garrett Nussmeier, LSU; Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt; and Cole Payton from North Dakota State. I know the Cole Payton train is getting ready to leave the station. I know there's a lot of people that like him. A big, strong, left-handed quarterback, a little bit of a longer release, but a very good athlete, very strong arm, big, strong kid, is capable of forcing missed tackles, was a man amongst boys at FCS as far as when he broke the pocket and broke contain and had to make plays happen with his legs. I'm really intrigued by Sawyer Robertson from Baylor, 2-year starter there at Baylor. Productive player. Kind of fits the prototypical build. He's taller. He's well put. He's got a strong arm to drive the ball down the field. He, like Peyton, also has a little bit of a longer release. So anticipatory throws are something that he doesn't need because he's got the juice. But when he sees things, it does take him a little bit longer to shoot the ball out. Taylen Green from Arkansas is also a super high toolsy player. He's probably the best overall athlete, very dynamic, and probably has the best arm. You could watch him play at Arkansas and see some flashes of Colin Kaepernick as far as the skill set. That's some of what I see in Taylen Green, but he's pretty raw. So the high floor player for me, the one that I would draft first out of this group is Garrett Nussmeier, and I know he's not the biggest, and I know we're looking for an athlete, and we're looking for somebody who has the ability to access all levels of the field and all conditions and has the rocket arm. And I know we want something different because of what we're coming out of is this era and chapter of the Dolphins organization. This dude is tough. The weigh-ins will be interesting for him. He was listed on the LSU roster at 205. If we come in at 215, 220, because he's not the tallest guy, but he does throw with anticipation. I think he's got the best accuracy of any quarterback here. And man, is he tough. Right? He's a coach's kid. He plays the game that way. A lot of control at the line of scrimmage. I think there's a lot of translatable skill set for Garrett Nussmeier, where I think the floor is a quality backup. So where do you draft that? Where do you draft that in this class? Does it get overdrafted? If it gets overdrafted, it's not for me, right? I'm all about winning the margins of your investments. Right? If you're drafting in the top 12, you want an impact player, get an impact player. I don't care if it's an impact player at safety or an impact player at guard or an impact player at tackle or corner or quarterback, right? I don't think you're going to find an impact quarterback at 12 in this year's class, but that being the point of I want appropriate value or surplus value for your resources. So drafting Garrett Nussmeier, trading back into the end of the first round and drafting Garrett Nussmeier, now you're investing multiple picks. That's not the pathway I'm talking about here. Right? I'm talking probably a middle round range. Now, if he showcases that some of his regression this year was because he was playing hurt and had issues with, I think it was an oblique, and like he really aces the pre-draft process. We've seen guys that have risen through, like maybe that does get him in the round 2 conversation, but not right now. Not for me. So that's quarterbacks. My favorite's Garrett Nussmeier. I'm most intrigued by Sawyer Robertson. I see the appeal of Cole Payton and Taylen Green. Pavi is not for me. I think he's a good college quarterback. I don't think he's going to make a big splash. And then Luke Altmaier is kind of a pro-style quarterback that I think is just a little too high variance. Here's the good news. I'm not going to go name by name for every position across the entire roster. But I thought quarterbacks was an important one, especially because there were only 6, and how important it is to kind of give you the full rundown. As far as our next position room at running back, the 2 names that stand out the most to me are a pair of Penn State running backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Allen's the powerful, big-bodied, physical, bruiser-type runner. Nick Singleton's a little bit more of the boom or bust home run style player. I would also acknowledge Jaden Ott from Oklahoma, who was really productive a few years ago at Cal, has kind of fallen off the beaten path a little bit more. But I think he's somebody who could be a mid-round or a late-round sleeper. But I don't see Miami really playing in this pool with Achane and Ollie Gordon and Jalen Wright all being on the roster and Bobby Slowick bringing some continuity to the offensive scheme. So running back to me feels a little bit, I would say redundant, but also redundant. Wide receiver. I would acknowledge Josh Cameron from Baylor, kind of a unique build. He's not super tall, but he's very long, and he's got good physicality and good athleticism with the ball in his hands. Malachi Fields from Notre Dame is a big, but like this is 6'4", 220+ pound wide receiver. And he had played at Virginia before transferring to Notre Dame. Averaged over 17 yards a catch this year. Obviously, big-time catch radius. The blocking appeal of a big-bodied player like that is apparent, and we do need to diversify the wide receiver. We need some more different skill sets. You look at Green Bay and what they have, and they've got a Christian Watson, big-bodied vertical player. They've got Jaden Reed, who's an inside-outside guy. Probably the most translatable player to Jalen Waddle. I think Waddle's probably a little bit more explosive, probably a little bit more of a pure route runner as far as versus Reed, but Reed's also younger, right? And Ted Hurst is a name that is getting a lot of buzz in the draft circles. He's from Georgia State. He's another like bigger bodied player that can get vertical down the field. So I'm looking for the big bodied wide receivers. They're the ones that are going to have my attention. Malachi Fields first and foremost on that list, but also Ted Hurst. Josh Cameron's built a little bit more like Romeo Doubs, to kind of draw a parallel to a player from the team that you just brought over the coach and the general manager from. Tight end might be the deepest room, which is great news for a Dolphins team that kind of has a blank slate at tight end, right? Like Greg Dulcich is an expiring contract. Julian Hill's a restricted free agent. Darren Waller's an expiring contract. You've got a couple of guys that have like never played, are the only guys under contract. So to give the rundown, there's probably a half a dozen tight ends that if you told me the Dolphins drafted them, I'd be excited about. Different skill sets as well. Kaczmarek, the Ohio State kid, was a transfer from Ohio. He played 2 years at Ohio. He's 260-pound inline guy, mauler of a blocker. Just you want an inline guy. If you want an A.J. Barner in Seattle, I think Kaczmarek can be that kind of player out of Ohio State. I think Josh Cuevas from Alabama is another blocking type player. I think you have an all-around type player in Sam Roush from Stanford, who had career numbers across the board this year. Is somebody who's played inline. He's played flexed. He's okay blocker. I think his pass catching ceiling was really limited by the Stanford offense. And then if you want to go flex tight end offensive weapon types, Justin Jolie, who was at UConn and transferred it to NC State the last 2 years and has been a very, 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 very productive player there. I think he's the intrigue guy for what he can do, like 6'3", 245, playing in the slot, big-bodied type of player. So a little bit of everything in the skill group. A lot of names you could tell me the Dolphins would come home outside of the first round. Like, I don't know that I mentioned a single guy that I would consider be a first-round guy here, which is good news for the Dolphins because they have 4 picks on day 2. 3 in the second round, 1 in the second, 3 in the third round, 1 in the second round. Pick 43. 43, 75, 87, and 90. So we're going to go to the trenches next, where there should be some first-round caliber talent available for a team that's looking to build inside out. That's great news. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections. There's no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. Prize Picks is incredibly easy to get started. You pick 2 or more players and choose more or less on their projections. It makes watching big games even more engaging, especially during the playoffs and the big game itself. And they have the early payouts feature that lets you cash out if a player gets hot to start. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had that dynamic way to apply all that knowledge. Now I can take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play-by-play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps involves trading, and that is involving significant risk, which is not for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission, merchant, swap, and firm. Okay. Full disclosure. The trenches, you never know who's going to pull out. You never know who's going to show up for a day, have a great day, call it a day, go to the Mobile or Pensacola airports and fly home. You never know who's going to have an injury after interviews. You never know that there's a constant churn in guys that accept invites and then drop out. And you saw it with like Reuben Bain and Keontae Scott from the Canes because of how late they played in the season, which I totally get. But we might mention some names here at any position that we may get to the first day of practices tomorrow, and they might not be there. But it is kind of a good primer for us to kind of get into a lot of these names in the first place. The first name that I'm going to acknowledge in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball is Gennings Dunker. Right tackle, has played both guard spots throughout the course of his career at Iowa. 6'4", 6'5", 315 pounds. Big time point A to point B displacement player. You want to talk about getting bigger. You want to talk about getting more physical. You want to talk about running the ball reliably. This is the Jeff Hafley wish list. We want to run the ball well, and we want to run the ball well when opposing teams know we're going to run the ball well. To have that kind of success, you need point A to point B blockers. Take another person against their will the opposite direction in which they are trying to go. Dunker's capable of doing that. Now, there's some limitations of him playing tackle. He's been a full-time tackle as of late. There's some concerns about the length that may relegate him inside a tackle. The Dolphins are going to do some musical chairs with their roster. If you told me there was a surviving player, and if you told me that player was Austin Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think he's your long-term answer there at right tackle anymore. I don't think he's reliable enough with the durability stuff. But if you're going to cut James Daniels and you're going to move on from Minkah Fitzpatrick and you're moving on from Tyreek Hill and you're going to move on from Bradley Chubb and you're potentially moving on and eating the money from Tua Tagovailoa, like the dead cap charge may build to a certain point where a player who could play and has position flexibility throughout his career in Austin Jackson maybe survives in a contract year. Maybe. What would be intriguing to me is if even if Austin was gone, Dunker's a name that makes some sense because I think he could be a long-term answer at guard or potentially tackle if you want to start him outside and let him fail it. That's kind of the Robert Hunt plan, right? Like, remember Robert Hunt in 2020 was a tackle, and then he moved inside to guard. And they had a lot of conviction that he was a Pro Bowl caliber guard, and he leaves in free agency to Carolina and made the Pro Bowl. So Jennings Dunker is a name to certainly watch. Keylan Rutledge from Georgia Tech is another name that I like. He's not as dynamic. He's not as explosive, but he has good strength. He's a wide-bodied frame, and he plays the game with the kind of tenacity that you're looking for interior offensive linemen. So Keylan Rutledge is probably an early day 3 name to watch. You kind of get into what was it? Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant last year they both went to the Raiders, but they were both mid-rounds, like fringe top 100 type players. Like, I see Keylan Rutledge in that light, where Jennings Dunker is probably a top 50 player in the class. At offensive tackle, Markel Bell, University of Miami, guys that size that have some level of linear athleticism are going to get a long look. And a developmental type that's probably a round 5, round 6 type player, just based off of kind of my experience, maybe round 4. Like, where'd Zach Banner get drafted? I'm going to do the risky thing here. I'm going to type. I've got a very delicate computer set up because I'm in the hotel room here at Pensacola. Zach Banner, USC, nicknamed the Hulk, was drafted in the 4th round, 137 overall. I thought so. So, like, that's probably the ceiling for Markel Bell, but he's like a day 3 developmental tackle. Intrigued to see how he does in this setting, which is usually the deck is stacked in favor of the defensive guys. Last offensive lineman that I would name is Cage Casey, Boise State, good athlete, declared early for the draft, probably a top 100 type of player. The leap from Boise State will be a test for him early, and I think that maybe incubates him from ideally starting early on. But remember, this Packers regime has had an extensive history of using at least one first-round or top 100 draft choice on offensive linemen. And depending on how the board falls at 11, depending on who's there at 43, like, you might get to 75, 87, and 90 and not have taken your offensive lineman, in which case I think that's where a name like Cage Casey is probably going to be in the conversation. So it's a name for me to watch. Over on the defensive line, I like the edge group a ton. I like Derrick Moore from Michigan. I like Zion Young from Missouri. I like Dennis Sutton from Penn State. Please don't hear the schools and get scared about an edge rusher from Missouri or edge rusher from Penn State. Dennis Sutton's a very different player than Chop Robinson. Just like Zion Young, I think, is a much more refined point of attack player than Charles Harris ever was, which they just put him in a wide 9 and told him to go get the mesh point and aim for 8 yards in the backfield and take straight lines to the quarterback. I like Romello Height from Texas Tech. A little bit of an older prospect. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, but, man, he's got a deep pass rush back. I like TJ Parker from Clemson. I think he's somebody who the tape was better than the production this year, which you could not say for everybody at Clemson, but that Clemson defense was supposed to have a bunch of first-round picks on it. I think Avion Terrell at corner played the best out of that group, but TJ Parker was kind of next in line. Sounds like he played through some stuff this year and is hopeful that he can prove that he's healthy. Tyreek Sapp, like a 280-pound cap from Florida. Guy's built like that. He's got pretty good linear explosiveness. Plays with some pretty good power when he gets into your frame. Is a name to know. Gabe Jackas from Illinois is another fringe top 100 player. You know, the edge rush group, if you don't come away from one of these guys from the Senior Bowl on the defensive line, I think you've had the board fall a really bad way for you, or you just put it off and chose not to do it. And the Dolphins are not in that position to do that, especially at the edge, right? They need some building blocks in that room. We're going to defensive tackles. Linebackers will go quick, and then back 7 on the other side of our next break. So make sure you guys stick with us. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important it is to find that candidate. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page to help you find the right candidates faster. If you were hiring somebody for this show, you wanted to replace me. Hope not. But if you did, you could put out a listing and be very specific about what you need with real experience, not just resume buzzwords. And sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role. And that makes a real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results by using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now. Support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you're hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. If you're a Dolphins fan, you've probably lived this experience in your own life. You drop more than $100 on parking at Hard Rock Stadium. You battle the traffic getting in, and then you're sitting in your car for an hour when the game is over trying to leave. What if I told you there was a better way? I found a new app that I think could help you out on game days. Dibs is a platform that connects you with verified homeowners and businesses near the stadium who rent out their driveways and lots on game day. We're talking spots as low as $25. It's up to 80% cheaper than stadium parking, and you get in and out way faster. Every host is verified and rated, so you know exactly what you're getting. Dibs is available for games and events at Hard Rock Stadium and is expanding across the state of Florida. Call Dibs on your spot today. Use code LOCKEDON20 for 20% off your first booking. Defensive tackles. Really intriguing group. Tim Keenan from Alabama. I'll read some names and then we'll dive into them. Caleb Banks from Florida. I think is going to end up being a first-round guy when it's all said and done, so probably not a name to know for Miami. Lee Hunter, another nose tackle type from Texas Tech. Very disruptive player this year. Daniel Jeremiah just put him in the first round. I thought it was a hot take. We did one for A to Z, or I did a defensive tackles to watch piece for A to Z, and I had Lee Hunter and said, hey, he might rise into the first round conversation here. I thought it was a hot take. DJ put him in the 20s in his mock draft that dropped this morning. Grayson Halton and Zane Durant, Oklahoma and Penn State respectively, a couple of penetration, undersized, 3-technique pass rush specialists, kind of sub-package guys. That's the kind of role that stands out to me for Miami and what they need when you consider what they have in Jordan Phillips, who got dapped up, and Jeff Hafley told him that he loved the way he plays and said, you play the game the right way. If you watch the behind the scenes for Jeff Hafley's introductory press conference that the Dolphins social media team put out, it's like 6 minutes long. It's wonderful. Really great to see behind the scenes for that day for Jeff Hafley. But Jordan Phillips was one of the guys who was there watching the press conference, and Hafley daps him up and says, I loved you when you come out. You play the game right way. Like, so that, as number one Jordan Phillips stan, that gassed me up in a big way. But with that and Kenneth Grant as a guy who can line up anywhere with his athleticism at 330, and then you have Zeke Biggers is a little bit more of like the 4-eye odd front end type player. I do think you need like probably a skill-specific player of a penetration 3-tech type of player for the long haul. Whether that's Durant from Penn State or Grayson Halton from Oklahoma, those are two names that I have my eyes on for that kind of role. Linebackers. Let's see. Where does it start? I want to make sure I don't skip over any names here. Jacob Rodriguez is kind of the starring name with how productive he was at Texas Tech. They played on a loaded defense. I think a name that I'm really intrigued by, and I know Simon Clancy from 3 yards per carry likes this guy, is Kyle Lewis from Pitt. Not the biggest linebacker, but a dynamic player, right? And good football instincts. I like Bryce Bachter from Oregon as well, as kind of a traditional average athleticism, smart Mike linebacker who seems to tackle well. Those guys don't get drafted particularly high. I look at Sean Dolak from Buffalo last year. I think at least Bachter played at Oregon, so maybe that helps his resume a little bit more than playing at the University of Buffalo like Sean Dolak did last year when he went undrafted. I think Bachter's probably a day 3 guy that I think could be an NFL starter. You look across some of these teams across the league, and they've got guys that were not highly coveted in the draft that they're smart, they tackle well, they're athletic enough. They land on their feet even if they don't get drafted high. I think Bachter can be that kind of player. Are there any outside linebackers? Yeah, there's 2. All right, let's go to the secondary because I want to talk about the corners. Chandler Rivers from Duke, a little bit more of a nickel player, different kinds of skill sets. You've got a guy like Chandler Rivers from Duke who is more of a nickel, but then you have a big, long, physical Chris Johnson from San Diego State, who's probably going to be a second-round pick when it's all said and done, a little bit more of a scheme-specific guy, doesn't have the best transitional quickness, but man, he could be really physical, and I've heard Jeff Hafley talk a lot about how he likes to disrupt the timing of routes. Julian Neal from Arkansas kind of fits into that same bucket for me. Colton Hood from Tennessee was the other Tennessee corner. Jermon McCoy, projected as a top 15 pick, didn't play this year. Colton Hood kind of emerged as the CB1 there. Again, not super dynamic athlete, but had a very productive season for Tennessee. I think if he were there at like 43 for Miami, he might be in play at that stage of the draft. The other position group that's loaded in the draft this year is safety. I think there's some interesting ones in Mobile. I would start with Kamari Ramsey from USC. He was a crush of mine last year, came back to school. I think he's probably a middle of day 2 type player. Does he make it to 75? Probably not. Is 43 too early? Hard to say. I wouldn't be mad about it if you drafted him there. Zakee Wheatley from Penn State is another 3rd, 4th round guy. Jalen Kilgore's a little bit more like a safety nickel type. I think about what the Packers got in Javon Bullard, and they drafted him in the 2nd round. Hafley's first season there in Green Bay. Bud Clark from TCU. Michael Taffy from Texas, another mid-round guy. Like, there's tight ends and safeties. You could probably get into that 3rd round range or that pick at 111 in the 4th round that they have, and you'd probably be getting surplus in those spots. Now, if too good to be true, if a Caleb Downs is there at 11, like, yeah, I'd pick Caleb Downs and then I'd say, hey, maybe we double dip at safety. Maybe I don't worry about it. But that's kind of the rundown on names off this roster. I'll see who else speaks to me throughout the course of the week, but coming into the week, these are the names that I have on my radar that I have a heightened awareness to through the lens of the Miami Dolphins specifically. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. I hope you guys enjoyed kind of an NFL draft rundown of names to watch. You can watch the practices on TV. The game, of course, is on Saturday. We'll do some deep dives on a lot of these players and, of course, get into free agency and the draft in the weeks and months ahead here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys as always for checking the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'll be back to talk to you all again tomorrow. Fins up.